Welcome back to the Daily Edge. I'm here with my brothers TJ and Todd. There's a lot going on in the world, especially in the U.S. There's a lot of stuff going on with the federal government and deportations, protesting, and some pretty unfortunate deaths have happened as a result of it. And I think we're going to process that today with you guys, kind of what we're seeing, our thoughts. And so I don't lock in on a ton of news, so I'm going to kick this over to TJ to kind of get us started.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that I feel lucky that I've been able to develop a perspective that's dual-sided. And I think a lot of people say that, but maybe because it's hard to know where you sit along the spectrum because the algorithms are so advanced and you're getting fed kind of what you want to see. I think I take solace in, again, spending the decade in the Pacific Northwest is about as liberal as things get, and then living in a state like Indiana, which is typically pretty red. So from a social media perspective, I see a lot from both sides and a lot of very, not just centrist stuff from both sides, but a lot of very far reaching on both sides. And so it's been interesting to see over the last 6 weeks, there have been 2 deaths in specific that have occurred. One was a situation with a vehicle where a woman was shot, and another was also in a protest situation where a man was shot point blank. And there have been different reactions to both, and there have been different perspectives on both. So yeah, like Trent said, it'll be interesting to process some of these things. You have people on one side, and I'll just give some examples. Again, this is going to be difficult because we all, I think, appreciate your perspectives on us as humans. And so this is difficult, I think, for us to we're not the people that necessarily put ourselves out there in that regard. I know that a lot of the content out there, whether, you watch Twitch streams with Hassan or you watch Twitch streams with Asmongold, and I'm talking to a much younger audience saying those 2 names and using Twitch. Those guys are kind of sitting on either side of the spectrum. Whether you align with either one of those particular people, that those extreme takes are what gets clicks, what gets views, what gets engagement. We probably aren't going to give you very much of that. I'm not going to go out here and call somebody a particular name because they chose to approach something a particular way. What I'm going to try to do is, and I think what we're going to try to do collectively is give you some insight into why people think about things the way they think about things, and what the reason that certain actions are being taken. What is a reason for the certain actions that are being taken? So I will say that, and then kind of kick it over to Todd for the real kickoff.
I've been seeing on social media, the silence is deafening. I've been seeing a lot of that from, I think people are looking for people to step up and speak out that, in particular on the side of that this is what has happened and is happening is unacceptable and needs to stop in some form or fashion to the extent it's happening. And I try to remain pretty open-minded, and I, when I see those things, I ask myself, why haven't I made a post condemning kind of what's happening? And there's a couple of things in my head that, as I've just thought through this, that have been realizations. One, and this is probably the saddest thing of all, I have no idea what's true. I really feel very unequipped to have a full understanding to the point that I feel educated enough to weigh in on it. Because a lot of people, they see the thing that they want to see and they latch onto it and they go.
Sure.
Right? On the right side, somebody sees a video of the protester driving the car and maybe trying to hit the person, or they see, the protester like getting in someone's face and they're like, see, they deserved it, right? And then on the other side, it's like you see someone getting shot, and which is horrible in any sense, no matter what was provoked it or what, but they see that and they're like, see, this is horrible. These ICE agents are just the worst people in the world, and Trump, and right, and everybody gets associated with it. They're just out there murdering people point blank, right? They kind of create that narrative. And so I have such a hard time. So I'm not that quick to like grab that piece of evidence and run with it, because we've seen, even in this last one with Alex Heretti.
Yeah.
Has different videos have come out at different points of time showing different things. And that's why I feel so unequipped to even know what's true. I mean, I know someone dying is bad, right?
Yeah.
But I don't feel like I know enough to know, like, and put myself in certain situations. And maybe some people are thinking, well, shame on you. But that's where I guess, one, I feel completely unequipped to know the truth and be able to weigh in with a full understanding. And then two, I also don't know that making a Facebook post is something that I feel will create a groundswell. And maybe that's wrong. Maybe that's the wrong mindset, that if everyone thought that if they all made Facebook posts that enough people would, like, you know, would trend or whatever, and then it would create an outcome. So I've just been pausing on this, and I've just really disturbed mostly by that first thing, an inability to get to the truth anymore these days.
Everything comes with such a narrative, like you said. Every time a different angle or a bit of footage is released, and based on who it's released by, it comes with a narrative. Oh, look at this. This person did this way, so that means that they had this intention. And I wonder how far back you have to roll this, meaning that this all started because at some point, the majority of Americans, you can carve that up a number of different ways. I mean, even to that point, like, what is the majority? And then we can start talking about
who's American,
voting and the lines and gerrymandering and all these things and how broken the system is. But we'll just say this for the sake of saying it. Well, I'm doing the Trump thing. For the sake of saying it, at some point, there was a platform that was run on that focused heavily on deportation of illegal, at the time, criminals in the United States. And everybody's like, and again, the majority, however you want to classify that, was like, yeah, we don't like that. Well, then at some point, then things start getting muddy, right? One side is they're getting rid of rapists and murderers and child molesters and gang members and all of these people. And that's who they're targeting. The other side is like, no. They're getting rid of citizens who, not technical citizens, right? But hardworking individuals who have been contributing to the United States economy, who have developed lives for their families in the United States, who are, upstanding members of the community in a lot of instances. Now they're going after those people. So now you start to, okay, who's right? Maybe it's a little bit of both. Maybe it's even more of this. I can tell you this from personal experience. And I think, you both are around families in this particular, I know way more of these people than I do of these people. Maybe it's because of where I live. Maybe it's because of where I grew up. I have had discussions with people firsthand about individuals that fall into this class. Yet I do know.
I forgot which side's which.
This side would be upstanding citizens, whatever. I've had one or two conversations with people who have had friends who have had this happen. And then now I do know people that would fall underneath this classification. But you continue down these paths, and then you get to a situation where you look at the people that are being... So depending on what you believe, you're going to have very aggressive opinions about the people that are employed to carry out deporting these particular individuals. And if you're on this side, that they're taking all of the good people who have, I was saying this earlier, all of us have things 20 years in our past that we're glad they're buried. And to have somebody come and dig up something you did wrong 20 years ago and make you pay for it, even though it is what it is, that creates, like I've said it on the podcast before, 20 years ago, I did some stuff with, my dad's business that put him in a real precarious situation. If somebody came to me now and said, hey, you have to serve felony jail time for that shit you did 20 years ago, it creates a feeling in me. And so I feel for somebody who entered illegally 20 years ago, and they've done everything right since then. And like, oh, nope, sorry. That's really unfortunate. So anyways, back to my point, as we continue this down, you're developing a very strong perspective on these people because in your mind, they're taking away all the good people. Okay, so then there is this activism on this side that is targeting the people that are being hired. So who wants that job? Nobody wants that job because you're getting doxxed, you're getting physically attacked, you're getting, perceived a particular way. And so then all of a sudden, and this is a lot of hypothetical narrative, right? It may be some assumptions, but now the federal government, who probably believes or maybe is doing what they think is good, right? Removing this side, the bad side. Well, they're having to hire barely qualified people to do it because who wants to put themselves in a situation where they're getting doxxed, their family's getting attacked? So now you're instead of hiring somebody who is experienced in law enforcement, who has self-restraint, who's been trained, you may be hiring the dude who is,
Confederate flag on his truck.
100%. And it's like, oh, this guy looked at me wrong. I'm going to beat the shit out of him. And if he does something else to me, I'm going to blow his brains out. Right. So maybe you're not hiring the most qualified people. So maybe there is a leg to stand on over here on this side. So that's where I talk about, and I know that was a long statement, but you have to unwind this all the way back to be able to figure out what's right, what's true, what's not.
It's a great point because then what I think is important about all of this, rest in peace, Charlie Munger, it's complex. You're looking at the feasibility of implementation now. It's like, okay, the idea of this is good. Now can we execute on this in a way that is fair? Because there's two things that happen when you start putting rules in place. There's always, to any rule that you put in place, generally there's a pocket of inefficiency there where people don't get a fair, when you put a black and white rule in place for whatever you're doing it for, in the vast majority of cases, there are people that get the short end of the stick with that particular rule. And we see this in corporations all the time. There's somebody who is really respectful. They always come back from appointments on time and early, and they're really respectful about it. They get their work day in. Then you get a couple of people that abuse it. Then you have to put in this policy that if it's over 2 hours, you're it. And then here, this person that's been responsible for several years with this comes in 2 hours and 5 minutes, and they have to take a half day PTO because that's the rule, right? And so you've got this all right, when you create these hard and fast rules, what are the implications to those that don't probably deserve it necessarily, that have been good people, contributing members of society, doing jobs that most people don't want to do for very fair, affordable wages, that sort of thing. And then I lost my train of thought on the second part of this. I struggle. Gosh, where was I going with that second piece? Oh, I know. So the other part of this is back to the complexity and the feasibility of the implementation is how many agents do you have out there? Thousands, maybe? Tens of thousands? I don't know. Hundreds? My point is, even if you're hiring the right people and you are doing something and maybe there's someone who gets treated inefficiently because of a rule, because a few people ruined it, you're going to have people that don't follow procedures. That is just human citizen. We've got laws here, and one out of however many people get charged with something or put in jail or whatever, convicted of a misdemeanor, felony. That's just a reality of human beings. It's a numbers game. Some percentage of people are going to not. And so this goes into the feasibility of implementation, the feasibility of execution. I'll go to Catholic priests, right? Everybody knows what happened with the Catholic priests and the whole, the accusations and the issues that happened with the boys and all the things. And that was funny for a lot of people. There are 300,000 Catholic priests out there. You could grab in any sort of institution where you're talking about hundreds of thousands of people. there are going to be bad apples in that bunch who are doing things they shouldn't be doing. Now, does that mean the whole institution and the whole the entire thing that they're trying to do and achieve all of a sudden becomes irrelevant and needs to stop and just crumble it because you have some bad apples? I don't know, and that's where I find myself unequipped. Let's just say for a second, Alex, for whatever he didn't do, I can't put myself in the decision of that ICE agent. I just haven't seen enough or informed myself enough. I'm not saying I'm fully informed and I'm taking a position that he should or shouldn't. I don't know how to get fully informed. If he shouldn't have died, if this was the wrong thing for this guy to, let's just say the guy murdered him, right? If we're going to make that unnecessarily murdered this guy, does that mean we stop removing illegal aliens from the country altogether? We have to completely stop this initiative. Like, how do you do it when you're trying to put, like you said, and especially with the hiring, who you're having to hire, and that scale and larger numbers, knowing you're going to have people, it's complex. I don't know what to do.
You go and you look at, again, it kind of goes back. It goes back to this crazy narrative that we're fed in these different algorithms and these different perspectives. It's like, do you think, I think of a lot of people. I think I saw something the other day, and who knows if it was real or not, but we're like a guy who was a Cuban immigrant and had like a Trump tattoo across his chest was being deported. Don't know if it was real or not, but it's like the ultimate irony. But you go back and you look and it's like, okay, this platform ran on this. And I think we go back to something that has been a constant theme throughout our podcast with self-control. You get a lot of people that are like, yeah, they're bringing drugs into here. They're bringing guns in here. They're taking our jobs, especially with the advent of AI and people looking at, there's going to be a shortage of white collar jobs. And then all these other people are coming in and they're taking our jobs. Well, first and foremost, the people we're talking about specifically have been prevalent in our communities for as long as I can remember. Doing specific types of jobs. And so the fact that this is a new problem, I'm not quite sure. But that was what everything was run on. And I wonder if now, even the people that were on this side to begin with, which is the side of removing the bad people, are looking back and be like, oh no, we didn't mean that. But the way they communicated it to us, that got us to buy in, or maybe we agreed with a couple other pieces of the platform. We're on board here, and now they're regretting it, saying, "Oh, well, we didn't. Maybe that didn't make sense because, from a humanistic perspective, which again, I think we all talk about. Most people align with something. Nobody wants to see anybody murdered, and nobody wants to see anybody's families ripped apart." And I don't think that and we may be in a situation where when the platform was initially communicated, it was done so in a way that, again, made you feel like there was a way to execute it that was black and white. Yeah, we're just going to come in and
get all the bad guys.
We've radio tagged all the bad guys. We know exactly where they are. We're going to go take them and we're going to get them out of here.
I think most people... I think this is where it gets really hard, is because I would say most people are humanitarians and value life and people. We've talked about value systems and like ranking of value systems and which things are more important. And I think the biggest you go all the way back to like controlling the borders and, there's a reason why there's a process to become a citizen, and maybe it's not the best process, and maybe the deportation is not, like, could they be doing this differently? Not just looking into whether you're a citizen or not, but looking at, how long you've been here and the contributions. Like, there's probably an opportunity to find some middle ground. And really, as I sit here and listen to you guys talk, it's like, why does it have to be green card or not? And what's the system look like? And how do we improve the system? And then you got the other side that are saying, well, illegal aliens have come in, and a lot of them are on the federal government programs. And so a lot of the funding, you can't continue to fund that as well as. So there's all these like elements of things going on that I'm not sure I quite understand. But I think the biggest fear, if there is one, is like ICE somewhat appears to be above the law. in some of these instances. And again, I don't watch a lot of news, but like right now it's illegal immigrants. But what if next time it's Christians or next time it's Jews? Like when you give people authority to carry out, like for example, the lady got shot. I watched the video in the car. Man, the angle I saw, I do not think that person was in danger. I clearly saw this with my own eyes that this looked to be that there was a hothead that did not need to take someone's life, and I was super disappointed. I was even more disappointed at the response we got from the White House. This wasn't we had one guy that made a bad call. It was almost like the president was telling us we didn't see what we saw. Mm-hmm. It's like, no, I saw that. And he's like, nah, you didn't see that. No, and so throughout history, we've seen parallels of people creating narratives and making you believe what they want you to believe. And I mean, the biggest example is obviously the Hitler, but like, I'm not comparing Trump to Hitler. I don't like what he's doing here. And I don't like how he's responding to these. Cause like even in the Catholic Church where you had some of those things happen, how the church's position was like, that didn't really happen. It was like, oh my gosh, like what can we put in place to never let it happen again? And taking ownership for it. Because when the president starts lying to your face about what you saw with your own eyes, that to me is a different level of control that I just don't like. And I love his business policy and some of the things that he's done for the economy, and the tariffs I think have been good for the economy. They announced the GDP is going to be like higher than ever. Really good things he's doing on the business, but the way he's going about this and the way he's responding to these situations is, in my opinion, I don't align with it, don't appreciate it. So that's my biggest challenge.
Well, I think that, to that point, that's why this tension has grown, right? Because Trump's approach to everything is double down. He's, and I think I made this analogy earlier that Michael Jordan in The Last Dance is being interviewed and makes a comment about you can't give your competition hope at all. You cannot give them the sliver of hope because if they get it, then they know, and it is what it is, and then they push. And I think his whole approach on this is the second we admit wrongdoing, the second we say we did anything wrong, they're going to absolutely mow us over, and it's going to be, and it's really interesting too because both sides have shown negative results in that regard. There is, you have seen active violence from protesters, physical violence on ICE agents. And you have seen, like, when COVID happened and Chaz happened up in Seattle, like they created this militaristic zone that like everybody, like when you get to the extremes, both extremes, in my opinion, just want the power and they're waiting for the other guy to flinch. Mm-hmm. I don't disagree with you. This is really one of the first times, normally anything that happens with the current administration, I kind of just laugh it off. Like, oh, it's just Trump, or this time, I saw the extra video from the lady who was shot, and it still wasn't enough, to your point, to be like, oh yeah, in my opinion, I was thinking about it the other day, this dude needed to be under her tire for him to fire shots at her, in my opinion. And again, but they continued to release more and more and more and more with this side did, Trump's side did, with more and more and more footage trying to convince you that you didn't see what you saw.
Right. Oh, this guy got drugged by a car a week later. He was traumatized. Like they tried to convince you. And I don't think that is okay. I get what you're saying by like, hey, once one protest wins per se or whatever, then this whole thing's out the window. This is a really tough one because I think, again, go back to, I would tell you that I'm a humanitarian. I don't want families ripped apart. I want people to be treated fair plus and given opportunity, especially people that have come in and contributed and been part of the economy and society. There's several people that my kids go to school with that have family members that have been impacted, and they're genuinely good people. So
I know it can't be perfect, and there's got to be rules in place, and there can't be an open border for obvious reasons. And so I'm really struggling with this. And it goes back to like, very seldom do I feel like the president actually controls a lot of the outcomes of what's happening. I think Congress is the puppeteer in this, but some of the things he's done lately with Venezuela, his aggression with Greenland, like, listen, like we all just need to be aware and keep watching and seeing how this narrative unfolds, because we do not want to see a force of nature like ICE turned on something that we believe in. Like what's happening now, majority say, well, illegal immigration is illegal, but like, and I'm going to use the, like, what if it's Christians? Like I'm just throwing that out there, and now all of a sudden we're rounding them up because of whatever reason. So there is a underlying fear with control and power and people not being held accountable. And in a couple of these instances where I know at least the first one, I haven't seen the second one, it clearly looked like a murder, and we're being told that it was warranted and justified, and I don't think it was. And the video's pretty stinking clear, and that's one of the benefits we have of having it, and we're trying to be convinced otherwise. And when people try to lie right to your face and then they try to double down on that lie, I think it's scary.
I think you just mentioned it. I think some people are seeing the pattern of behavior more broadly, and that is probably what's more concerning. Trump's never been a guy to take ownership. I mean, he's a narcissist, and I think even people that voted for him knew that, and he has continued to lean into that over and over and over again with the aggression with Greenland, which he kind of backed off of, but he's just like, his rhetoric, like I have, I was thinking about this the other day. I'm going to China in 2 months. And like, I was thinking about this morning, and I've been over there twice and I've never felt unsafe. And there's no part of me that like really has a legitimate concern, but enough to pause to think like, gosh, I hope Trump doesn't say or do something stupid like a narrative rhetoric at the end of March right before I go over there and put a target on my back. And again, the odds of something like that happen, but the fact that I even paused to think about that for a second is like, he is fairly unhinged. Now, you can't argue he's getting certain things done, and are the tariffs more equitable from a economical perspective based on how we support other economies, or is it just a power that is, I heard a speech from the Canadian Prime Minister just kind of saying, power, the overuse of power, basically, to just like, you're going to do what we tell you to do because, and I think there's a broader pattern of behavior here that the reason I share that about China is people are starting to kind of be like, okay, this is getting a little beyond my comfort level, and wondering if it's going to continue to escalate.
Do we think that it is in our society specifically what's happened in the past? Do we think that's still viable, right? Because you look at some of these communities, North Korea is a good example, right? Where the government controls everything, specifically the media, right? And their ability to, the ability for society to disseminate information at all, right? Everything is propaganda. Mm-hmm. And so in our world, we know, back to the main theme of our podcast, community is the most important thing. And we have so many different mechanisms to connect as a community, from a national perspective, even, we can be, ideologically captured by the algorithms, right? But at the same time, we do have mechanisms to communicate with each other on a humanitarian level. And if we believe collectively that the majority of the people in this country and globally are humanitarians, and we can connect on that level, do we think something could happen? I mean, where given precedence to a different group, right? And I'm not saying that this group is any less important, like you said. I mean, my kids are Hispanic, right? Tara's family's been here for 3 generations, I think, right? But at one point, that's how they got here. So, yeah, I wonder, do we think that it could happen given our ability to communicate as a society?
You know what's interesting is I got to think is I don't think any of us understand the biggest risks to civilization as we know it. I was just thinking about that. Like, is it economy? Is it safety? Like, what are the biggest? Because like when Trump or any other president is sitting back and like, we've got to solve for this, I'm not even sure what that is.
All right.
I mean, like, if you can't start fundamentally understand that, like, GDP grew 4.2%. We're just talking about in Q3, which is 1% higher, which is off the charts. But like I don't even know what we're solving for anymore, because, well, we spent a whole episode talking about the debt and how big a deal it was, and I was going off the rails on the debt and how this isn't like, in comparison to other countries, it's like, yeah, it's like we're kind of in line, and it's like I just don't know, like.
Wealth and power.
What's going to be
is exactly what we're solving for.
Well, and so like, what does that mean? What does that look like? Like the things China has done with more of a, how would you classify their government?
Dictatorship.
A dictatorship, but there's still free business. But they're doing things at the government level to ensure China's well positioned as a country.
Yeah.
We don't do that. We don't take that type of dictatorship. It's more free market. I would say Trump's doing more of that now.
Yeah.
He's putting incentives in place, and he's kind of controlling some of the inputs and outputs. And so, like, is China wrong for doing that in the dictatorship because it oppresses certain people? I mean, I don't know. And I don't know, is deportating people because we think it's a safety thing? Is it because we think it's a financial economy thing? I don't even know why we're doing it. Now, obviously, we're controlling the borders because we don't want to let criminals and thieves and that seems to be more of the people coming in, but that's not all of them. And so, like, why are we? It would be interesting to see what the president would say the most pressing core issues are that we're solving for. I'm sure it's around economy. I'm sure, but I don't know what it is outside of economy and safety.
Well, what I think, yeah. I mean, he would tell you it's safety. That's why the narrative is drugs, gangs, murderers, rapists. They would say safety, but I think I don't think you have to dig too deep to know that this administration, and I think in general, most countries are going for wealth and power. Now, there are some countries that have some very developed countries who have done a great job staying out of that and have gotten more to an altruistic place. But Trump is a nationalist. He is ready for America to be successful at the expense of anyone else.
Well, like Europe. Europe now is this blend of immigrants that's not necessarily actually run by Europeans per se anymore. It's one of the most diverse pools in there. And the foundations of the country are being challenged. Like, we have our forefathers that came up with the Constitution, and at some point in time, the identity is lost. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing.
That's actually a really important point. I've thought about that a lot, and I think that's a lot of where the rub comes from. And politically, like, you had a group of, pardon my French, but a group of batshit crazy people who wanted to bear arms and wanted freedom, and safety wasn't necessarily at the top of their list. And that's why we get into these gun debates. It's interesting how much it's interesting for people to weigh in on whether or not some of the founding principles of our country should play into, if at all, and even some of this one nation under God stuff. Now, some of this, there's a lot of nuances, and Jenna keeps me honest on this because we tend to have some good debates and when that was added, but there certainly is some constitutional themes around God, right? And so it's interesting. And then going back to the right to bear arms and freedom and whatever, should that play a role? Because as it's been 250 years, and now safety, like, we're all like, self-preservation, safety is important, right? I think to them, who were all willing to die on the spot to found a country that had a different operating mechanism than England, how long and do we, or are we able to, or should we stick to some of those founding principles and say, you know what, guns aren't safe, And the fact that we haven't outlawed guns is probably going to result in more deaths. But you know what? That was a founding principle of this country, so we're going to allow guns. Versus, I think a lot of times you get into these debates of like, okay, well, having guns is more safe because somebody can pull up a gun and shoot the shooter, right? And then you got other people saying, well, no, guns aren't more safe because if, you hear the comedian from Australia is fantastic, Jim. Gosh, I wish I could. But he touches on this is like, no, if it's super hard and super expensive to get automatic weapons, then you're going to have less mass shooters or the mass shootings are going to be less. So it's more safe to not have guns. But I'm interested because you brought up the point, whether it has to do with God and Christianity or it has to do with guns, like when do founding principles come into play or should they?
Well, it's funny you say that because you would talk about a full circle moment. I saw something on social the other day. I have a good friend who lives in Minnesota, and he's it would be considered on the left side of things, and he posted something about the undertone of it was essentially, I know on the left we have always said ban guns, but now arm yourselves. Because, like, shit's getting real in Minnesota. Arm yourselves. Like, take advantage of the Second Amendment. So it's like a full circle thing, which is interesting. And the other thing, kind of going to your point, I know I've seen a counter figures lie and lies figure, right? I've seen a counterpoint to that where there's some country out there who has more relaxed gun laws than we do, and somehow has a 0.0% murder rate, right? Yeah. So it's like there's always this, but it is a good question. Like, at what point do certain things need to change to accommodate? Now, unfortunately, we seem completely incompetent when it comes to finding a middle ground.
Yeah,
it's either
for sure
socialism or, capitalism, and there's no blend. It's just like you said. It's money and power.
It's really messy, and I think the right to protect yourself and your family and your possessions is kind of where all that goes back to. But like, if we've been somewhat lucky where we live and what we've experienced, but what if there was no one to protect you, and you had your house and you had to go out and figure out how to get food, and people were trying to steal everything you had? And like, we haven't lived in a society or a time where there has been chaos like that. And I think some people are preparing for that. And I hope I never see it, but I was thinking about this the other day, like everything's just always kind of gone up in the stock market and everything. Like, what if stuff really got bad? Like what would happen if I actually had to use silver to barter because the dollar wasn't worth anything? Or I had to use that to get food, or I had to, like, what does that look like? And what type of survival mechanisms and what type of things would you need to survive? We've never experienced that in the modern day. And so we're so far removed from, let's just all get along. Like, I don't know. I sit on both sides of that.
Yeah, I think there's two pieces of that. What you just said is right, is like, at what point is it going to go crazy, or has society changed enough? Do we live in enough of a different world that it actually does call for deviating from our founding principles? Maybe those founding principles were somewhat in context of the society at the time, and it's changed enough that it warrants us looking at it through a different lens. Or again, Jenna, she's always big on telling me, yeah, well, right to bear arms, if everyone just had a musket, and then that would be perfectly fine, but that doesn't mean everyone should have the right to bear an AK-47 or whatever else. And so I think it's interesting because there's no right answer. That's where I keep coming back to, it's complex. If people would just appreciate the complexity, we would be so much closer to a middle ground. But everybody thinks it's so damn simple that it's like, obviously he is a Hitler, and obviously he is the best thing that's ever happened to the America since George Washington. The lack of appreciation for the complexity of this kills me.
Have we evolved past the point to where we'll innovate our way out of anything? Meaning, like, if you look back in certain times and historically, back to the old Maslow's, but like, you look at certain times historically, and again, I'll go back to this book that I'm reading. I've been reading it for a couple of weeks, called Jungle Keepers. There is talk in this book about some of the untouched tribes and some of those things and their focal points and some of the things that they deal with on a regular basis. But like, they're dealing with the things you were just kind of referring to. There was a chapter in there where they were so. There are different tiers of evolution within the Amazon itself, right? And there are a handful of tribes that are completely uncontacted, or very, very, very rarely, kind of like North Sentinel Island.
Yeah.
And, these people, they have 7-foot long arrows on these huge longbows. And then there's like a tier or two above that, these a little bit more of an evolved society. They have shacks, they have, certain tools and things.
Sounds like Avatar.
And these people will show up, whose their concerns are like, we hunt for our food. We have things trying to kill us on a consistent basis. We don't have any of these. We don't have electricity or any of these modern amenities you guys have. So for us, we are dealing with the base of the hierarchy. We're trying to survive. So mentally, we're way more focused on just that. And we don't have the ability. And obviously, they've been around for hundreds, if not thousands of years. They've never evolved past or matured past a particular point where those things aren't worries anymore. We're there. Like, we don't have any of those worries anymore. So you see something like climate change, right? Climate change 15 years ago, 10 years ago. I remember I'll admit this. I think I voted for a president from the Green Party, like in one of the Obama administrations, because I was so convinced that like, we're dead. Like in 10 years, the oceans are going to boil. But then, you have other people. I remember around that time or a couple years later, listening to like Pat McAfee show. This is when he very first started. And he's like, who cares? Oh, they're telling us it's climate change. Well, how come it's colder? Like those arguments.
One cold day. And
God, climate change. But it's like the fevered pitch. There are still people out there that are targeting climate change and trumpeting climate change, but the issue's been around so long. Now it's like, okay, well, we could innovate our way out of this, or maybe it's just a money play. Maybe this is just, maybe the big solar, right, or big wind is so. Anyways, going back to my original question, are we at a place where we've hit a point where we are just going to innovate our way out of problems?
I don't think we're there yet. We are one major event away from being back in survival mode. You guys may disagree with that, but like when you see when there's a big snowstorm coming, you can't go buy milk and eggs. Like the food chain is very fragile. So much stuff is moving logistically all the time. If there was a big setback to food, now all of a sudden, if you can't get food or food becomes really expensive or real scarce, what kind of mode do people go into? If you're not eating, what will you do to get food for your family? What level will you go to protect your family? And that's where I think some of these things come into play, is when everything's going like it is now and you can pull up to McDonald's and get a double cheeseburger, it's all good. But when food either gets outpriced, we've seen hyperinflation happen, or something happens in the supply chain, because it's not, I don't know what the stat is exactly, but there is not, it's a, they tell you to keep a certain amount of money for a certain month. Same with food. It's not as long as you think it is. Like, if something like even when there's salmonella breakouts and there's things that happen, it's super impactful. And that's just from like so until we're manufacturing our own food, and we've like, whether that's through 3D printing it or we've got more, and we rely on this global system. And if part of that global system falls out and people cannot get the Maslow hierarchy needs, they're not getting food, shelter, water, then I think you're going to be back in a mode where you have to protect yourself. Whereas if a 6'4" dude that can bench 350 walks into your front door and says, I'm taking whatever I want, and you don't have a firearm, guess what he's taking? Taking whatever he wants, because you're not big enough to stop him.
I think that's doomsday. I think you're down. I think we're so far from something like that. I think you should do some
research, because I don't think we're
I'm not saying there's people out there that haven't created narratives that get people worked up about that, but in this particular country, I think there are people still living with that. And there's maybe at some point a meteor is going to hit the earth too. But there's people that make it seem like we're one kind of bad break away from everybody being on the streets fending for themselves. I think we'd be really surprised how well humanity would pull together, and that we would work on this together if we were to really because here's what's going to happen. If that ever happens, it's basically taking an indoor cat and putting them outdoors. Like, we're all not probably going to have the survival skills necessary because that's what it did. I mean, we'll be back out in the rivers fishing with spears, trying to kill fish and eating and learning how to put it over a fire and cooking it. We'll have gardens in our backyard and whatever. I mean, the whole, like, everybody in the country is going to be going door to door, stealing stuff from everybody else. I think that's crazy.
And you could be right. What I'm saying is, like, I don't even know if it's that case. I think it's where the grocery stores are bare, the ability to get food, you've got to get it through different means. And maybe it is. Well, maybe it is. I don't think we're out like fishing again, but I think it goes back to what could cause civil unrest to where people aren't automatically getting their needs met, right? Because if you're getting your Maslow's bottom pyramid are non-negotiables, those are getting met whether you work or don't work, not whatever. Like, if you're getting those met and you think those are always going to be met, and no matter what happens in society and world and government, those will always be met. Because that's back to your question. I don't think that's necessarily the case. And you're saying, I think it is. Like, at this point in time, no one in this country is going to ever have to worry about this bottom layer anymore, because they're going to be met regardless of what happens.
I think you need to live
99.9%.
The reason I said do hard things is because I think you need to live in the middle of it. I don't know the exact, I would
agree with that.
I kind of know, but like, I think what happens is like, I see it from Todd's perspective. If we live like the three of us live, if it happened to us, that's exactly what we'd be doing. We'd learn to hunt. We'd learn to fish. We'd try to figure it out. We'd go find people that could help us. If we lived like the lady who loses her absolute shit because McDonald's fries are cold and is freaking out because they can't get DoorDash, then yeah. Because like, we know people, like, if that happened, what are they going to do? They're going to lose their minds, and it is the end of the world for them because they're so adverse to adversity. Oh my God, you mean I have to get up off my couch? Oh my God, you mean I have to do something besides go sit at a desk 8 hours a day? Like, it's scary shit if you've never done it. But if you've gone and you've done hard things, relatively speaking, it's not as daunting. And I think you can stay more positive if you're living in the middle of it. You've proactively, on your own accord, jumped in a frozen Mississinawa River. So if you had to go ice fish in the Mississinawa River, like, it wouldn't be the most comfortable thing in the world, but if it came down to it and you had to do it, fine. You have yourself and other relatives who are loaded to the gills with firearms, and you had to go hunt or grow crops. Like, depending on the time of year, you could do that. And I think other people, like you said, if you can't drive through McDonald's and get a double cheeseburger and fries, are going to be like, what do I do? Yeah. Those are the people that would react like you're saying.
Well, there's a lot of people that have their own farms and sustainable. Like, if something happened like that and you couldn't go to the big cities and people couldn't go get food, fast food, it would be devastating. You're out on the farm. I'm out there sitting with my in-laws, and they got chickens and we have eggs and everything and cows. Like, it's just like another day tomorrow. So it's just how you live your life, because it wouldn't be anything for them if the food shortage happened until people started coming out to the farm trying to steal the chickens, the cows, and the eggs and things like that. So there's a level of preparedness people are taking. I'm not a doomsday prepper, to your point. I tend to think that we have hit a level of civilization I hope I never see in my lifetime, the reset button. But we can't forget that that's happened time and time again in, like, even back in the 40s in World War II, where, like, they made every penny move because they couldn't get anything. Everything was rationed. There's been times in history where that's been a reality and not too far-fetched from it. So I don't know where we're at on the spectrum, and it probably is to speculate. I might be over here a little bit for there, but I don't think it's out of the question.
They talked about things like solar flares, taking out like the electrical grid
energy disruption. I mean, there's all kinds of things, and we've got redundancy to the hills probably in most of it, but it's not completely off the table.
We're a fairly resilient bunch as a society or human species.
It would be
but there's no doubt. It would be interesting. Interesting is really the right word. I mean, I think there's probably some natural selection that society could benefit from a highly adverse event. I know that sounds horrible, and I may be in that part that gets adversely selected out because I've been declawed, so to speak, and then trying to get it back out into the wild. But I mean, I would say our kids' generation is going to be super unequipped for something like that. If I dropped my kids out in the middle of the forest and, in the middle of nowhere and said, figure it out, like they'd be dead in a couple of weeks, I would imagine. Except for maybe Oliver.
I don't know, man. I think that like
Oliver would eat his brothers if it came down to it.
I think we each have kids of an age and of a level of determination that they probably wouldn't be very effective or efficient at it to start, and they might get close to death. But I think they're like headstrong enough and motivated enough to figure it out long term.
That'd be that's what we should probably do. We need to, maybe we just go out there. We need to do more outdoor type stuff. I mean, we're horrible at it.
That's true.
My in-laws are talking about like my niece knows how to go out, pick a chicken out, cut its head off and defeather it and cook it. Like if I had to do that, that would be the next closest thing to death for me to like kill a chicken, break its neck, defeather it. Like that would be really hard for me to do. Yeah. Yeah. Like they do that. Like that's like, she's got that skill set. I know for a fact that I would survive hopefully with them learning that. But if there's nothing about me that wants to do that. And I don't know if my kids can do it. Now they know how to shoot guns and they've been trained and things like that. But we always joke, like if there's an apocalypse, I'm going to be the runner. I'm going to be the one running the mail back and forth or doing whatever, because there's not a whole lot else I can do without the internet. Listen, we hope that doesn't happen. We see things happen that are kind of first, like the stuff that's going on. We've been in probably pre this term of Trump. We haven't had a lot of turmoil. There's been some stuff in the Middle East, but he really is mixing some things up. And there's a lot of speculation. You can read into anything. I guess I should preface that. But as one last thing I would like to say is, regardless of who you voted for, it doesn't mean you agree with everything that they're doing. And I know there's so much hatred that goes along with, like, if you voted for Donald Trump for X reason, it doesn't mean that you knew or are behind how he's handling the ICE situations. And vice versa. If you voted for Kamala or you voted for Biden, you saw something, a value that you valued, doesn't mean you agreed with everything they're doing. And I think that's really important, because I know people debate and shun friends and family because of who they voted for. You really got to understand at the core what was the trigger point for them, and realize that, like, listen, as somebody who, from an economy business owner standpoint, I voted for Trump because I thought he was good for business and economy, and he is good for business economy. I completely disagree with what's happening right now and the push for power and the way he's going about things. So I would just want you guys to give grace to understand people, because again, I think most people are humanitarians and they don't want to see families separated. They don't want to see people in hardship. They don't want to see people get murdered. And just because they may have voted for somebody for a different reason, now they're responsible for the death of individuals that they, don't or couldn't see or don't align with.
My closing thought would be, it's complex, right? And so JD Vance got up the other day and said, okay, so this one guy's got a kid, because there was a story of like this 5-year-old got detained by police or whatever, if you guys remember that. And the story was that the father, who was illegal, ran, and they didn't want to leave this kid out there freezing. And so they like brought him inside or whatever. And Vance is like, it's complex, because what do you say? You don't want to see families get ripped apart. So what do you say? Anyone who has a kid is then by natural law legal. you can't indict them or accuse them or convict them of anything just because they have a kid, and that means that, to avoid families getting ripped apart. So from all the angles, I've mentioned several others, but that one just came to mind when you mentioned that. I think you're right. And this is it's infinitely complex. And I think the more people can be curious and ask questions and explore and understand and kind of incessantly seek the truth, the actual real underlying truth, and not just latch on to that narrative that might align with your position, the confirmation bias of that's an actual real thing. As humans, we're very, very adept at latching on to something that already aligns with an opinion we've expressed or believe. That's what we choose to see because that's the lens we have on. And I think the more we can appreciate the complexity and seek the other side is going to benefit everybody.
Well, I would add it on to both of those things when it comes to complexity, and that's understanding. I think this is something you understand as you age. You understand how complex the social network is, society's network as a whole. And so just because someone doesn't come out and trumpet the opinion that you have the way you feel it should be trumpeted, don't be so quick to judge that person. I mean, there's a reason that we don't argue as much online as we used to when we were kids, because you never know what bridge you're burning by presenting something in a particular manner. And hey, you can make the comment like, oh, well, if they had that opinion, it wasn't a friendship that I valued anyway. But you may not know that there could have been some point in time where they could have provided a very poignant piece of information to you down the line, not necessarily for your own personal benefit, but you could have lost out on a perspective that could ultimately end up being very valuable to the way that you evolve or that you raise your kid, because you felt it was really important at that second to put out a piece of information or some type of propaganda or some type of perspective that is like bleeding edge aggressive, and you lost out on something. Again, even if it was just somebody else's perspective on something that could change the trajectory of your life. And I'm being a little bit over the top as it relates to that, but that's a big reason that I don't put a lot of that out there personally. I've posted less and less on social media as I've gotten older, just because I would rather, there are people that I now will not talk to about particular topics because I just don't want to go down that path with them. And unfortunately, I'm going to lose out on a valuable perspective that I potentially could have gotten if they were a little less aggressive with their thoughts in the beginning. So, you don't always need to. I mean, I appreciate the people that are protesting some of these things that have happened lately. I'm not. I don't think that's wrong. I think that's a good thing about America. But at the same time, be careful.
I have one final thought. As you process all of what's going on, be careful what you say to your kids and be willing to have conversations with them about it. I believe kids can be even more polarizing, and when they hear their parents and the one-off things they pick up and the conversations they're having and the conversations that I hate this person, I hate that person, but really talk to your kids about the why you have voted, feel this way, explain it. They're going to be challenged with their friend group, and they're going to be challenged at school to give their opinions on things. And it's okay to stand out and be different. And this isn't about normalizing, but it's about understanding and appreciating opinions from all sides.
Yep.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, that was a deeper one, a tougher one. Again, these are our viewpoints that I think we all, at the end of the day, want to see people flourish, and realizing that that's complex, as Todd would say, and there's not an answer for it. So do your research, talk to people, be open, and we'll see you next time.